Hi, my name is Stu Bamick, and I'm part of a ministry called Consequential Christianity. At Consequential Christianity, we're trying to say that our faith is more than just a spiritual enhancement to our lives. It's more than something nice that good people do on Sunday mornings. It's more than the general belief in the notion that God exists. It is consequential. It makes a difference in our lives. And as we follow these tapes, you're going to see that we're trying messages that we're putting online. You'll see that we're trying to deal in the world of felt needs, like David becoming an overcomer message series, Galatians, a Bible study, and this series, Our Faith, Our Culture, and Our Future, which deals more in the world of ideas. And to begin this series, I wanted to have a brief prelude to what we're going to cover and talk about over the next couple of weeks. And I wanted to do that by way of having a pastoral word with you. As you're aware, our country is facing a great divide. There's a great division in our country today. We spent a record 148 billion, yes, that's billion, not million, $148 billion on a recent presidential election. Our country is polarized. It's disillusioned. It's filled with vitriol and anger and resentment and bitterness and violence and confusion. Now, I've had people say to me just this week, I feel like I'm going to throw up and vomit. Another fellow said to me, I can't sleep at night. I'm so confused. I am so disillusioned. A woman said to me, I'm scared. I've never been here before. I don't know what the future is going to hold for us in our nation. And as I've been thinking about that in this series, I think I know why there's such great unrest and division in our country. And it's not what you would obviously first think it is. You know, when you're sick and you feel like you have some problem, you go to the doctor, and the doctor does what he calls certain vital signs. He looks for a heart rate and blood pressure from us. He looks at takes our temperature, he looks in our ears and in our eyes. He wants to see, first of all, if there's some basic things that he finds wrong, if there's something that's really not looking right. And once he finds that, he wants to dive in deeper and find out what the source or the cause of that problem is. For instance, if you have a high heart rate or high blood pressure. Well, I think that's the same kind of thing with our nation and our country today. I think we're facing some fundamental problems in our culture. And I would, that are overwhelming us. And you're going to see, I'm going to be sharing just a little bit about in this message series, the rise of human secularism, relativism, loss of absolute values, the loss of a need for a belief in a God. We're going to talk about moral therapeutic deism. Our researchers and sociologists today are finding that the majority of our children believe in a moral therapeutic deism as a fundamental religion of their lives. I talk a little bit about that in the next message. And there's that fundamental erosion of the three core values of our society: the traditional American neighborhood, the traditional American family, and the traditional American church. And the question becomes, when we lose the traditional family, when we lose the traditional neighborhood, when we lose the traditional church and its message of belief in historic Christianity, and we're faced with human secularism and the rise of moral therapeutic deism with our young people, who or what takes the place of those three fundamental core pillars of our culture? And I think I know what it is. As I've looked at the vital signs, I think that underneath that is the rise of socialism and neo-Marxism in our culture. And I believe that ultimately it is the greatest threat to our American culture as we know it today. The rise of socialism or neo-Marxism is seen especially in our youth in our country today. Let me read you some statistics. 36, according to one poll, 36% of our baby boomers, 44% of our Gen X, 70% of our millennials, and 65% of our Gen Zs state that they are somewhat or extremely likely to vote for socialism. In the youth government poll, we find that those between the age of 16 and 29, 44% would prefer to live in a socialist nation rather than a capitalistic nation, even though only 33% of them understand what socialism really is. And we see these effects in our educational system or in the indoctrination system of our kids today. We see these effects in our TV and news. We see these effects in social media and communications and the control that outside forces have on those, and how they can silence people or even put you out of business if they so choose to, through social shaming or through a way of just silencing your voice and marginalizing whatever voice you have to say today. I think we all have a sense that there's something fundamentally going wrong with how we communicate with each other today in these social platforms. And we see it taking place in our local governments. There's this rise of socialism and neo-Marxism, which I'm going to explain in the next 4 or 5 messages. What I'm trying to say is that there is a dramatically different vision of our country with our younger people and our older people, our elderly people, than the vision of our original founders. We are slowly eroding away our faith, our culture, and our future. Will Durant, in his epic 11-volume work on the story of civilization, as you know, he was a Pulitzer Prize-winning nonfiction author, wrote this simple sentence: "A great civilization is not conquered from without until it has destroyed itself from within." A great civilization is not conquered from without until it has destroyed itself from within, with its norms, its values, its ethics, its culture. Ideas have consequences. Ideas shape history, they shape events, they shape your life and my life, people like you and me. And that's why I think in consequential Christianity, it's important for us to think theologically. Theo, God, ology, the study of God, the study of God's mind. How does God think? What does God have to say about these things? I've learned in my life and work over 40 years of speaking to people, that people are not interested in what does Stu have to say to me. They're interested in what does God have to say about this. And at Consequential Christianity, we are committed to up our game to address not only those felt needs of fear and failure and brokenness in our lives, but to address the world of ideas, of thinking, which shape history and culture and events in your life and mine. And I'm going to do that by asking, when we look at this series, 4 fundamental questions that I use as vital signs or as the filter for all of the world views that I look at. And they are: what is my truth source? Who is God? Who am I? And who is Jesus? What is my truth source? Who is God? Who am I? And who is Jesus? So the pastoral word, before we get into this series of our faith, our culture, and our future, is this. People have been asking me, and I wanted to get to it right up front. People have been asking me, so what do I do about this world that I live in today? I just feel so disillusioned. I'm so confused. I'm so afraid. I feel numb. I feel sick. Well, I want to offer 3 quick possibilities to you that you can take and use them if you like, if they're helpful to you, and we'll be dealing with these at greater length in this series. But number 1 is this. Here's what you can do. Here's what you can do. Number 1, know your enemy. Know your enemy. Sun Tzu's The Art of War, written in 500-600 years ago, this Chinese warrior, when he wrote that epic work, he wanted us to know what we're up against. What is the world we live in? What does it believe? What is its culture? What are the ideas behind what we're seeing today? You see, I believe that Christianity has fallen asleep. And it's done this throughout history. History repeats itself. You can go to Bible studies and have perfect church attendance, but that's no longer enough in our culture today. That might have been great in the 50s or the 60s, but it's no longer enough today. We have to understand as believers what's happening, and not only what's happening, we have to understand why it's happening and who is causing it to happen. And I think you'll find that this is not shrouded in mystery. It's not the unknown. It's out there. It's in the open. There are people and personalities working in certain places to bring about the rise of socialism and neo-Marxism in our educational systems, in our media, and in our government. And our role as believers is to get in there and take that on. We find 1 Peter 3:15, these words, 1 Peter 3:15. But in your hearts, honor Christ the Lord as holy. How do we do that? Always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you, yet do it with gentleness and respect. Be prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks for a reason for the hope that is in you, for a reason for your faith. And in that reason for your faith, a reason why other world systems and other faith systems really don't compare with Christianity. This gets us into the world of apologetics. I'm calling you to get involved in apologetics. How do I know that I can know? How do I know there's a God? How do I know Jesus is God? How do I know Jesus rose from the dead? Again, it's thinking theologically through the mind of God. I remember the story of the astronomer and the theologian, and one day the theologian was passing the observatory of the astronomer, and he went in and saw all of his charts and his maps and his telescopes, and he said to him, well, you astronomers, you're all alike. You do all this study, but don't you realize it's as simple as twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder where you are. Well, several weeks later, the astronomer was passing the study of the theologian. He went in and saw all of his books opened and all of his writings set before him. And he said, oh, you theologians, you're all alike. Don't you understand? It's as simple as Jesus loves me. This I know, for the Bible tells me so. But it's not. It's as complicated as the stars of the universe. The minute you say Jesus, I'm asking which Jesus? A redacted Jesus, a real Jesus, a spiritual Jesus, a Savior Jesus, or just a good teacher Jesus, a rabbi? Who is Jesus? Now, how do I know he loves me? Oh, because the Bible tells me so. How do I know the Bible is true? How do I know that God has revealed himself to me? If there is a God, how has he spoken to me? Has he spoken inerrantly? Has he spoken in a plenary way? Has he spoken to me verbally? Has he spoken to me through nature? Has he spoken to me in my conscience? It's not that simple. Know your enemy. Get into the world of ideas and a reasonable defense for the faith that we hold true to us. Now, there's a second thing. Number one, not only know your enemy, but secondly, get off the reservation. Get off the reservation. We've noticed that throughout history, whenever Christianity loses its voice and gets back on its heels in a culture, which it is doing in our culture today, we've noticed that it tends to retreat toward what I call a monastic or reservation theology. Let's stay to ourselves. Let's play it safe. Let's withdraw from the culture. We'll be okay if we band together behind our walls and our fortress. I call that redemptive lift. Have you ever noticed that the longer you're a believer, the less contact you have with secular people or the secular world? We spend more and more of our time, the longer we're believers, with other fellow believers and less time with the world. In essence, we abdicate the world to live by itself. Here's an example of that, and I don't want you to take this too far. But Christian schools, yes, I love Christian schools. I think they're great. I think they provide a great service. I applaud them. But there's a downside. The downside is this, that the more Christian schools, the more Christian teachers, the more Christian students, the more we have taken Christian teachers out of our public school system and devoted themselves on our reservation. The more of our believing children that we have that are out there, we've taken them out of the school system and brought them into our homes. That is the downside of that we've abdicated, that we've given over, that we've turned over, that we've released our public education system to a secular, humanistic, socialistic, neo-Marxist system in which our children are getting indoctrinated into a different understanding of history and who we are and of culture and values than the one that we grew up with. And so our job is to get off the reservation and get back in there and get our hands dirty. I love the story of Levi's party. Levi became a Christian. You know, Matthew, he became a Christian. He was fairly wealthy. He was a tax collector. He was hated by a lot of people. He hung out with sinners and prostitutes. And after his conversion experience, it was so dramatic to him that he wanted to tell his non-believing friends about who this person Jesus was, but he knew he didn't have the gifts or ability at that particular moment. He had just had a conversion experience. He says, so I don't know. What can I do? Well, I know what I do really well. I have a big house. I serve and have and hold great parties. So I could have a great party. Now, and I would invite all my friends and I would invite Jesus. Now, here's what I see as his dilemma. Matthew was sure that his friends would come to that party. They loved parties. Turn up the music's blasting away, there's great food, there's plenty of alcohol and wine. That's no problem, inviting my friends. My question is, would a rabbi, would a believer, would a holy man, would Jesus be willing to come and contaminate himself in my secular world? And so I see Matthew as asking Jesus, I would love my friends to come know you, and I'd love to have them rub shoulders with you in their world, because they're not going to come to your world, at least not right now. So I'm going to have this party. They're all going to be there. They're prostitutes, they're sinners, they're tax collectors, they're outcasts. They're on the outside looking in of the religious circles of the day. Would you come and be with them? And Jesus said, of course. Of course I would. I would love to be with your friends, Matthew. Now he gets challenged by the religious world of the day for hanging out with sinners. And he tells them, where would you rather have me be? With the sick or the healthy? I've come to be the great physician to those who are sick. And I think that's our calling. To get out there, to get out there into the world, to get off the reservation, off the monastery, and live in the world of Levi and of his party. And maybe some of that's getting on local school boards or PTOs or involved in local government or coaching teams. Getting involved with non-believing friends. Get off the reservation, leave behind our religious turf for a while, and infiltrate into our world. Well, there's one other area that I want to suggest to you. 1, know your enemy. 2, get off the reservation. 3, we win one life at a time. I became a believer through Young Life. A fellow by the name of Jim Rayburn founded that ministry. And one of his principles was we have to learn the right to be heard before we can tell the greatest story ever told, because everyone deserves to hear that great story. And he said the way we earn the right to be heard is by doing contact work. We get out there and we live where the students live. We go to the basketball games and the football games. We go to the high school. We learn what kind of music they like, what kind of clothes they wear, where they hang out, what they love to do, what they're interested in. We get on their turf. We win them over by earning the right to be heard. Because we understand that only God can change the human heart. And the way he does that is through one life at a time. And the way he changes one life at a time is through you and through me. We understand that government cannot legislate good. It can legislate penalties for doing bad, for evil, but it can't change a human heart. Only God can do that. And so I say we get out there and we love, we serve, we care, and we share. We love, we serve, we care, and we share. And then in that last piece there of sharing, when the time is right, after we've built up faith and people want to know, do you love me? And can I trust you? Only then do they want to know, what do you have to say? And then we give that defense of our reason for faith and hope in our lives. Now, I know that many of us feel like, well, I don't know how to do that. I'm like Levi at his early conversion. Well, I'm going to just suggest that we learn to do that. And I'll do a talk on how to share your faith so you can have some guidelines and principles. But primarily at this point, just share with somebody what God has done for you in your life, a personal story. I call them my stories. This is my story. Take some time to write it out. This is how God has worked in my life, and share that with someone. Make it personal. Make it real. That's our role in life, is to share what God has done within us. There's the story of the angels that come to Jesus when he returns to heaven after his ascension and is coronated at the right hand of God. And they say to him, well, Jesus, so what was your plan for carrying on your message throughout the generations and the ages? And Jesus said, well, I carefully trained these 12 men to share this message. And they'll tell people, and they'll tell other people, and that will last throughout the generations. And the angel said, well, those 12 men, Peter, James, John? Well, Jesus, what's plan B? And Jesus said, there is no plan B. It's up to you and to me, just you and me. So I would ask the question, how has God prepared you for this moment? Where has God put you at this moment? And who is God leading and drawing towards you at this moment? And my guess is you are prepared. Maybe you can write down the people and the influences and the places that have prepared you to share your story. And maybe you are in the right place. People are coming to you. Maybe God needs you to give you eyes to see the people that he walks in front of you, in front of your path, that are ready and open to be loved into the kingdom of God, and then to be told this wonderful, great story. So I pray that this series is going to be of great help to you in allowing you to do that, of getting into the world of ideas that our culture is being eroded away by this attack on our fundamental values. So I hope you're ready, and let's get started.